Today's news, as members of Parliament return to the lower chamber, Prime Minister Davis looks back on the PLP's first year in office. Hurricane Ian is still the focus as it churns towards the Florida West Coast. The Bahamas Financial Services on the verge of yet another EU blacklisting, and there is a hunger crisis in the Bahamas that is not being properly addressed. Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Jerino Saunders. This is your JCN Evening News. It's a pleasure to have you join us. After just 12 months in office since winning the 2021 general elections, the Davis administration contends that the Bahamas is in a much better place than it was 1 year ago. Today, as members return to the House of Assembly, Prime Minister Philip Davis, reflecting on his government's accomplishments over the past year, says much has been done, but there is still much work to do. JCN's Lissy Bastian has more in this report.
The difference 1 year makes.
Amen.
I'm being chastised. I should say, what a difference a year makes.
What a difference a new day makes.
It was just 12 months ago that the Bahamian people voted overwhelmingly for change. They didn't like what was being done, how it was being done, and who was doing it.
And by any measure, the country was in a dire state. Those were the words of Prime Minister Philip Davis as he reflected on the first year his administration has had since taking office in September of 2021 following the general elections. Prime Minister Davis touted his government's accomplishments while noting that much was accomplished, but there is still so much more to do. Since taking office, the Prime Minister has always contended that the economy was headed for a fiscal cliff, with $2 billion having been borrowed every year for 4 years when the Free National Movement was the government, with no plausible plan for the growing debt. He further contends that the country was in fiscal, healthcare, educational, and economic crises, but says his administration is grateful for the trust, confidence, and partnership forged with the Bahamian people as it bodes well for national development.
We are making good progress on many of the commitments which we made in our blueprint for change. But the war in Ukraine, which started back in February, and COVID-related manufacturing and supply chain issues in some of the major markets have combined to create a new and very serious emergency, a global inflation crisis, which has driven up prices across the world. For a long time now, the cost of living in the Bahamas has been too high. Yes. But with global inflationary pressures driving prices up across the board, life has become unaffordable for so many Bahamian families. Deputy Speaker, the government is working hard to help the country recover and to provide relief from these multiple crises. Yes. At the same time, we are also working to bring about the big transformative changes which will make us stronger, less vulnerable to future crises, and bring us closer to fulfilling our national potential.
Add to that, the government has made progress in healthcare sector, hiring more doctors and nurses, and began upgrades to local clinics with promises of new hospitals both here on New Providence and on Grand Bahama, improved relations with the various workers' unions, negotiating outstanding industrial agreements.
We also settled and are continuing to settle outstanding promotions and regularizations for public sector workers. We negotiated union agreements with the Bahamas Educators, Counselors, and Allied Workers Union, the Bahamas Customs, Immigration, and Allied Workers Union, the Bahamas Union of Teachers, the Bahamas Nurses Union, the Bahamas Educators Managers Union. We have completed those agreements.
You say 12 months?
It is important to note, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that these negotiations resulted in the largest ever remuneration for Bahamian workers in public service.
Now, while that's all well and good, what about the inflation crisis? Well, here's what the Prime Minister had to say about that.
We are implementing multiple policies to address the issues which contribute to the high cost of living. The most direct tool we have to affect the cost is by reducing import duties and monitoring price controls. I repeat that. The most direct tool we have to affect the cost is by reducing import duties and monitoring price controls. In the past year, we have therefore reduced import duties on dozens of food items, including healthy options like fruits and vegetables. We have lifted the import ban on Canadian beef, which will lower the cost of meat to consumers. We have expanded the list of food items on the price control list and have also hired new price control inspectors to ensure compliance with price regulation requirements. These are measures which bring some immediate relief, but we know we also must take big steps to reduce reliance on expensive foreign imports.
The Davis administration has also made strides in agriculture, energy, provided affordable housing and social support and empowerment. Prime Minister Davis says against so many criteria and in so many ways, the Bahamas is in a much better place than it was a year ago. For JCN News, I'm Lissy Bastian.
Thanks for that report, Lissy. Powerful Hurricane Ian is plowing through Florida's southwest coast with catastrophic storm surge, winds, and flooding as a Category 4 storm with maximum sustained winds up to 150 miles per hour, according to the National Hurricane Center, the NHC. Ian has already battered Cuba. The storm left 11 million people in total darkness. However, power has since been restored in parts of that island. The storm also claimed the lives of 2 people on Cuba, and buildings have been damaged nationwide. As for Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis has warned that the storm is the, quote, real deal, end quote, as tornadic activity has already been seen in South Florida, according to the National Weather Service. As for the impact the storm will have on islands in the Bahamas, the Department of Meteorology says a tropical storm warning is in effect for Grand Bahama and the Bimini Islands. Winds are gusting to near gale force in Bimini and Grand Bahama, while rain bands continue to spread across the northwest and portion of central Bahamas. Minister with responsibility for the National Emergency Management Agency, or NEMA, Miles LaRota, telling parliamentarians today that NEMA and its National Emergency Operations Center have already kicked into action as of 6 p.m. on Tuesday. Teams from the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, the Bahamas Department of Meteorology, the Department of Social Services, and the Department of Local Government have been in communication with island administrators, local government officials, and disaster consultative committees in the northern Bahamas, as well as the western parts of the Bahamas.
The NEOC was partially activated by the Director of NEMA, Captain Stephen Russell, and the following persons were represented: Deputy Director Gail Outen-Monka, Deputy Manager Lisa Boleg, Chief Petty Officer Ramiko Burrows, Administrative Cadet Kayla Albury, Administrative Associate Caitlin Taylor. As of 900 hours, September 28, 2022, representatives from the following ESFs will join the NEMA staff in the NEOC: Health and Medical Services, Urban Maritime Search and Rescue, Mass Care and Shelter Services, Local Government, and the Department of Meteorology.
The Ministry of Education has announced that all schools in Grand Bahama and Bimini will be closed until further notice as a result of Hurricane Ian. NEMA's director, Captain Stephen Russell, today ordered the activation of shelters in Grand Bahama and Bimini as a precautionary measure against potential impacts from tropical storm force conditions associated with Hurricane Ian. 6 shelters were activated on Grand Bahama and 1 on Bimini. Captain Russell also announced that floodwaters rescue teams have been pre-positioned in West End and Alistown as another precautionary measure. Responding to a post on social media of school children walking through flooded roads, which was shared many times, Minister of Works and Utilities Alfred Sayers says after seeing the images, he made calls to the authority at the Ministry of Works to address the issue. He revealed that in addition to Carlton Francis Primary School on Blue Hill Road South, there was also excess flooding at CV Bethel High School on East Street South, the effects of Hurricane Ian that was more than 300 miles away. Minister Sayers goes on to explain that due to the potted water, school children are having to take off their shoes to walk through water if they are not being dropped to school via a vehicle.
Was established with the following: Administrator Joseph Ferguson, Ms. Tammy Mitchell, Deputy Chairman of the Grand Bahama Disaster Consultative Committee, Administrator Desiree Ferguson, and Mr. Roach, Deputy Chairperson of the Bimini Disaster Consultative Committee, and Administrator Deidre Fox in the Berry Islands. In Grand Bahama, as of 16:30 hours on Tuesday, September 27, the West Grand Bahama District Disaster Preparedness Team is on standby and ready to activate if the need arises.
Minister Sayers says as they are reviewing the building code, they have sought the services of Global Engineering Management and Development Consultancy Mott McDonald with regards to updating the building code to current best practices and international standards. He says moving forward, the government seeks to be more effective and ensuring that buildings are more consistent with land use policy, with the idea of building more resilient structures considering the new normal of stronger hurricanes.
I'm advised that that's being addressed now based on WhatsApp I would have received from Mr. Henry Moxie. The challenge we have in the Bahamas, and this is why land use, we're reviewing the land use policy, is that many of our structures were built on wetlands. And in building on wetlands, you have a lot of concrete, you have sidewalks, and therefore the natural flow of the water has been prevented, and you have the potting of water in areas where people have to walk or drive and so on.
When asked whether the government plans to conduct an education campaign informing the public on building code changes, Minister Sayers says not only consumers need to be updated on the changes, but engineers and architects as well. He noted that the ministry's engineers are currently being reassigned to focus strictly on training and professional development considering the new modalities such as renewable energy.
There has to be building in a way that we've never built before in order to have the kind of resilience in terms of the height of the foundation, what is done on the first floor, and so on. So this is providing us with an opportunity to be very critical in our own self-reflection and to design for the future. So that we have the kind of adaptation that will keep our country safe, our people safe, and will protect the built environment from destruction.
Minister Sayers says consumers need to be better informed on location for purchasing property and construction. He says laws like the Planning Subdivision Act and the Building Regulations Act will have to be changed. Sayers revealed that in the study conducted after Hurricane Dorian, many buildings in Grand Bahama and Abaco were not compliant to building codes.
The engineers in our M&E section, as plans for new buildings and so on come for review and approval, have to be up to date in terms of solar energy and the integration in the grid and so on like that. So professional development, there is an emphasis now within the ministry. We also have to have seminars and work with the construction contractors association so that the people who are doing the building also develop their professional competence, really, in terms of new building material, as well as solar and so on, like that.
It is expected that the Bahamas will be listed as a non-cooperative jurisdiction by the European Union, the EU, in the next revision of the list in October. This due to deficiencies in implementation of the Commercial Entities Substance Requirement Act 2018 and economic substance reporting, according to a joint press release from the Ministry of Finance, the Office of the Attorney General, and Ministry of Legal Affairs. When questioned on the matter, Attorney General Ryan Pinder says it was the inadequacy of the previous F&M administration failing to properly implement the act and to have sufficient economic substance reporting.
And what it does is it requires certain economic substance within the jurisdiction, depending on the type of business you are. Now, that piece of legislation was drafted in 2018, brought into force January 1st, 2019. You would know by those dates, this is an F&M administration piece of legislation. They brought it. I was on the committee in the beginning, but I think they brought politics to financial services, which is usually unconventional, but we saw that with their recent press release. They've taken a rather unconventional approach to financial services in the country. And then they immediately stopped inviting me to those meetings. So with respect to the actual implementation that the F&M administration did, clearly it was fundamentally flawed. It was in a state where it was non-compliant, clearly. They had 3.5 years to put in place a compliant regime of economic substance reporting and failed to do it. They failed the country, they failed the financial services industry, and they really should be ashamed of themselves now trying to make this issue political since it's squarely on their feet.
Speaking with the reporters before going into the weekly cabinet meeting on Tuesday, Attorney General Ryan Pinder says the Davis administration was notified of the deficiencies relating to the Commercial Entities Substance Requirement Act implementation, and despite the government making a commitment to the international body to address the identified deficiencies, it will not happen in a short amount of time.
Clearly, with a fundamental flaw, it takes some time to fix, and we were just unable to get over all of the hurdles in time for the non-compliant rating. So what we've been doing is we're going to have to put in place a new portal, a new reporting system to be compliant. We have a series of proposals in place now. We're going through those, and we will get them in place as quick as possible to try to rectify this situation.
In a press statement, the Member of Parliament for East Grand Bahama and Shadow Minister of Finance, Kwesi Thompson, questioned why the current administration did not follow the advice given by the outgoing F&M administration to meet with officials from the European Union when threats of being blacklisted first arrived. Mr. Thompson also calls on the government to reestablish the Special International Tax Unit at the Ministry of Finance and upgrade the substance reporting compliance protocols, data and statistical reporting capabilities to ensure the exchange of information is done on a timely basis and by international taxation standards. And finally, in this segment, the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, member states, including the Bahamas, elected Dr. Jarvis Barbosa da Silva Jr. of Brazil as the new director at the 30th Pan American Sanitary Conference today in Washington, D.C. Dr. Silva currently serves as the assistant director at PAHO, where he has led the organization's efforts to increase equitable access to COVID-19 vaccines and to enhance regional capabilities to produce medicines and other health technologies. During his acceptance speech, Dr. Silva expressed his thanks to all candidates and the member states that believes in him.
I think that this is a clear demonstration about how the countries love this organization, respect this organization, have interest to strengthen this organization. For the first time in our history, we had 5 candidates, 6 candidates at the beginning, 5 candidates, and this is a clear demonstration of the high interest that the countries have to strengthen this organization. So I'm very, very proud and very happy. I'm a public health worker. I want to thank not only the countries that supported me, that voted for me, but all the countries in this region. We work together with you. It's not easy to follow Dr. Etienne's leadership, but I do believe that with the same commitment that we have to strengthen health, to strengthen the quality of life in our region, we work together.
The director-elect will take over from the current director, Dr. Carissa Etienne, on February 1st, 2023, and will head the organization for the next 5 years. The Bahamas Minister of Health and Wellness, Dr. Michael Dovell, also attending that conference. We'll take a break here. We'll be right back after these commercials.
Kids, let's go! Sean, what are you doing?
I solved it. We'll buy our life insurance policy from this company and then go over here and get our home insurance. Then get our motor policy from right over here.
Or we could just get it all with CG Atlantic. Save a lot of money and effort.
They do it all? Even pensions?
Even pensions.
We're like a husband that doesn't overcomplicate everything. CG Atlantic. Good like that.
Now, I know I've said it before, but this time, I swear it's different. Grammy dreamed about this number, so I won't lose. I can't lose. This is my last time. Please, son, just give me one more chance. I'll give it all back to you.
Excessive gaming affects more than just the gamer. This message has been brought to you by the Gaming Board for the Bahamas, which encourages you to game responsibly.
Marlin Marine and Generac have the standby generator that fits your needs. Conserve power by using only 1 or 2 circuits during an outage with our 7.5 kilowatt. Or manage your power usage with our 10 to 16 kilowatt standby. But why only power part of the house? Get whole house protection with our 20 kilowatt Generac standby and never lose power again. Give us a call at 393-7873 and get the right unit for you. Marlin Marine, giving you power on land and sea.